Dyslexia Awareness Week began today. It's aimed at not just raising awareness, but also showcasing the amazing achievements that people with dyslexia have made. This year's theme is Dyslexia Matters, and it will cover everything from creating a friendly environment to supporting and encouraging those with dyslexia.
That's right. Joining us now is the CEO of Dyslexia Action, Geeson and Rosie Edmonson, who herself has dyslexia. Good evening to you both, and thank you for joining us. Thank you. Perhaps if we could start with yourself, Kevin. I think, first of all, this is obviously an important week to raise awareness, but dyslexia is very misunderstood, isn't it? People seem to think it's one very narrow, specific type of problem, but it's actually more of an umbrella, isn't it, for lots of different types of difficulties with reading.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. I mean, it is a broad spectrum of things, but also a broad spectrum of in how it hits people. So we should think of it as a continuum. Some people are more affected than others.
Yeah.
But it's about 1 in 10 in the population. So what does dyslexia mean? For most of us, we sort of understand it's to do with reading and writing, probably spelling, that kind of things. But not everybody. But has other impacts like memory. Often people struggle with what we call working memory, so that's remembering short-term instructions. So you might, say if you're in a classroom situation, for example, and the teacher gives you 5 things to do, if you're dyslexic, you might actually struggle to remember all 5 things, and it's important to understand them one at a time.
It most certainly is. Now, Rosie, if I could bring you in, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you found out at university that you had dyslexia, and at university, at the best of times, can be a very difficult, time in someone's life. There's a lot of intense reading happening for most people at university. What were your initial feelings at the time? How did you kind of work out that you had you had dyslexia?
Well, I was diagnosed earlier in life with dyspraxia, because a lot of people with dyslexia also have dyspraxia. And it was through that I realised that there was something else there, that there was another piece, like you were saying about it being this huge umbrella, and so many people kind of have various different overlaps, the conditions overlap, and it was through them I realised that there was something maybe else.
That's right, and I mean, it's quite late in life, isn't it, to find out at university. I mean, you hope that when people an intervention is made at a very early age, that the necessary protection or the necessary measures will be put in place to enable that person to achieve. Because I'm sure you must have been very, very frustrated, because often people think that people who have dyslexia are a bit slow, don't they? And that's not the case.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin, that's something that we hear story about time and time again. We hear about people who were written off as being stupid, or they're written off as being lazy is the most common one, isn't it? Written off as being lazy. Actually, dyslexic people have often been those who have achieved the greatest, in not just in the general field, but also in fields of academia. Yeah,
no, definitely. There's good examples of. Unfortunately, there are still examples of kids being written off. We did a YouGov survey recently, about a year or so ago, where teachers are still tearing up the work of dyslexic kids in the front of the classroom and saying how bad it is. But but with support, with the right support in school or university, people can succeed, and some people succeed just because it's hard work. And if you are dyslexic, everything's hard work. It's probably 10 times as much work as if you're not dyslexic. So one of the reasons why dyslexics are successful is not only because they rely on they build up their strengths often around reasoning and visual type skills.
Other types of cues.
But also they're used to working really hard to get over what the struggles they're having, which means that they're better fit for life when it comes to going to work or studying in university.
You mentioned the struggles there, Kevin. If I can come back to you, Rosie, right? If we could focus on, you touched on university a little bit earlier. How about kind of growing up and school life? I can imagine it's so difficult because you're still kind of working out what's what your barrier is there, really, because I guess it's not until very recently been something that's been brought into mainstream attention. I know you mentioned earlier off air that your mother's been very helpful to you growing up in that regard. Can you talk me through some of the difficulties of growing up with dyslexia and not quite knowing what it is?
My mum had quite a big fight on her hands to get me support as a child. She was lucky because I had, for my dyspraxia, I needed quite a bit of occupational therapy and things like that. But at the time, it wasn't like, especially dyspraxia, but dyslexia and dyspraxia weren't very well known. There wasn't much awareness then. And she had to fight quite a lot to get the teachers and to be more aware of it, and because I was quite a clever person, it was hard to get me the support I needed, because they assumed because I was clever I wouldn't need any kind of help.
I think, Kevin, I mean, what Rosie says is very key. Having a supportive parent there behind the scenes, and that's what you always find, is that it's the parents who tend to notice first, but often by then it can be quite late down the line. Is it something that teachers are becoming more aware of? Do you think that they're spotting it earlier and managing to identify those children? Because with the right support, those children will go on to achieve absolutely as much as any other child.
Definitely. I mean, I think there's it's better in schools than it was, but there's still places where it could be better, if you know what I mean. There's certainly we did a report last year which identifies some really good practice in schools and things that work. So the thing with dyslexia is it's not a mystery, that we know the kinds of things that schools can do to support kids with dyslexia. So it's not, we haven't got to find out any new things.
Yeah.
But what we've got to do is get better at spotting kids with it. The new phonics check that kids have at year one, year one, which is introduced by the present government, is a good step forward in terms of beginning to try and to identify those people who are struggling to put symbols and words and sounds together, if you know what I mean. And that gives an early indication of the kinds of kids that might need support, whether it's dyslexia or they might have some other kind of developmental support that they need.
The key is identifying it early, isn't it?
And
exactly.
just knowing what to look out for. That's brilliant. Rosie, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us, and please stay with us as we move on with the programme. It's been a fascinating discussion. We will come back and talk about it more.